that is a challenge that people can go away and start to do. The next time someone comes to you with something and you think, I think they could figure this out for themselves, refuse to tell, only ask and see if you can get them to come to the answer themselves. And that's how you kind of start to build a leadership culture. But yeah, we've seen that kind of flow through a company.
Tea with Toby, 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 tea with Toby.
Hi, I'm Cameron from Smooth Digital and welcome to Tea with Toby, the show where we ask and answer the questions playing in the minds of the care sector's business leaders. This week's episode is sponsored by everyLIFE Technologies, and we're going to kick off the show with a few words from our Marketing Strategy Director, Tobi Alli-Usman.
Cameron, thank you for the intro. For those of you that are new to the show, just to give you a bit of background, here at Smooth Digital, our main focus is to help care homes and home care businesses maximise their ability to provide the very best care in their communities. And in order to do that, they're going to need to grow. Now, we know care business leaders have a number of challenges when it comes to growth. So we want this to be the place where you could put on a kettle, have some tea, and enjoy a growth-focused conversation, and hopefully you can take away some actionable tips where you can implement into your business. And on that note, I would like to invite our first guest, Sophie.
Hello.
Thanks for being here. Round of applause for Sophie.
This is really a thing now.
Yeah.
Sophie, just before we start, for the benefit of the audience, could you give us a little background about who you are and your area of expertise?
Yes. So I'm Sophie Coulthard. I work for a company called Judgment Index. So we work with care companies and we help support them in all sorts of ways with their recruitment and retention, with their leadership development as well. My personal background is sales and marketing, really. But I grew up with a dad who was a performance coach. So I was always involved in leadership, and when at school holidays I'd be sat in the back of a room somewhere watching him kind of run leadership workshops, and you don't realise how much you absorb.
Yeah,
so we now work together, and then the other thing that I do that probably if anybody recognises my voice is I host the Road to Outstanding podcast as well, which is a podcast about sharing best practice, tips, ideas with people in the care sector.
Brilliant.
Great. So now people can put a face to the voice.
Yes.
We've got the queen, the original queen of podcasts in the care sector here.
And
with
it's
us,
nice
so.
to be this side.
Yeah.
Though it's different.
So in Tea with Toby fashion, let's jump into the questions. Now the first thing the first sort of topic I wanted to discuss was culture.
Right.
Now that's on everyone's lips. It was Peter Drucker that said, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And I also agree. I think you can achieve some amazing things with the right culture in a company. Now, the question I have for you is, why should care companies not only have and develop the right culture, but the right leadership culture?
Okay, so it's interesting because I used that quote in an article that I wrote just before Christmas. Culture, I think the first thing to think about is people just quite often talk about a good culture or a bad culture, but there's all sorts of different types of culture that you can have within a company. So you could have a very, very much a learning culture, where people are encouraged to learn and develop. You can have, a cliquey culture where everyone is, very cliquey, and it can have that kind of toxic culture that we hear about quite often. But I think a leadership culture is a great thing for care companies to strive to have. We need more leaders in care. I think we need more leaders in all sorts of industries, but that's a different conversation. And one thing I find is, quite often if I talk about leadership in front of a room, I'll ask people to put their hands up and say, who here is a leader? And so many people don't put their hands up, even when you're in a room of people who might be team leaders, deputies, even managers. Yeah. They might think of themselves as a manager, but not a leader.
Right.
We're all leaders.
Yeah.
You're a leader. If you're not the leader of a team, you're at least the leader of yourself. And I think in care, you are often leading the people that you care for at at a very basic level. And so I think if we can start to develop that mindset of how can we encourage our staff and our teams to think like leaders, problem solve for themselves, and kind of develop a culture where people do think of themselves as a leader in some way, then that will start to develop a culture where people are more self-sufficient, can make decisions for themselves, and that will help a company to kind of thrive, and it will also help the leader, as in the manager, who is probably quite bogged down with having to tell people what to do all the time. And so I think there's lots of benefits to kind of thinking, how can I develop a leadership culture within my home or company?
So for someone listening to this today, let's say, you know, they head up a company, what can they do to sort of support and encourage leadership in the company? I
think there's definitely a lot more that places can do, I can see, in terms of giving responsibility. There are all sorts of roles that people could take on. I know we see roles such as activities coordinators, but even things like a lot of people are reluctant to give social media to members of staff. And members, I'm sure you probably talked about this, so it's probably a hot topic for you, but you know, to give people that extra bit of responsibility and test the water with them, you know, give them some safe boundaries to work within. There's all sorts, you know, you could have little events team of people thinking about how they could run events for a care company, charity, you know, raising funds. There's all sorts of ways that you could start to test people and give them a little bit more of extra responsibility that will help them to feel valued, and hopefully start to bring that side out of them.
So I know there's probably some listeners here who, how can I put this? They are control freaks.
Yeah.
And usually, if you're going to allow someone to take on a project, they have to be willing to allow an environment for them to maybe make a mistake. Now, have you got any examples of companies that maybe you've worked with that you know that they've taken on a project successfully and they've built on that and they've ran on it?
I can think of a company that we've worked with where they had a lot of very young leaders. Yeah. So they had quite a young workforce, and they really identified that they needed to start thinking about their team leaders will be their next deputies, will be their next managers, and how can we start to kind of give them some tools to support them and develop them so that they're ready for it. You know, we worked with them over a number of months and kind of taught them a lot of things which are in the book, which I'm sure we'll talk about later. I think the important thing with people who are control freaks, and I know this because I am one myself, is it can be very easy, and what I've seen within a care home, time is short, a manager's job has got more tasks and, you know, processes and admin than ever before. Sometimes it is a lot easier to just tell people what to do, especially in a morning meeting, or if somebody comes to you with an issue. The quickest way to get something done is to say, do this, do that. But it's not allowing people to think for themselves. One thing that we talk about a lot, that we always try and instill with everyone that we work with, is to learn how to coach. Okay. And a lot of managers say that they coach, but I've seen sort of managers in action when I've sort of gone in and shadowed them for the day, and they'll say, okay, I'm going to coach. And coaching is really all about asking questions, asking open questions, and believing that the person can find the answer within themselves. And if the people are listening to this now, I would say think about your team and think about, actually, do they know the answers within themselves? But whether it's confidence or whether it's obviously lacking that leadership culture within the company, that stops them from thinking for themselves. They come to you, they ask the question, they want you to perhaps tell them what to do, because they're going to feel, I guess, safer in that. But start to ask them questions. Start to don't give them the answer. See if you can tease it out of them. Now, when I've watched managers do this, and they start off well, and then they get a bit frustrated.
Exactly, yeah.
and it's a lot easier to tell them.
Yeah.
And that is a challenge that people can go away and start to do. The next time someone comes to you with something and you think, I think they could figure this out for themselves, refuse to tell, only ask, and see if you can get them to come to the answer themselves. And that's how you kind of start to build a leadership culture. But yeah, we've seen that kind of flow through a company.
Excellent. So the question I have is, how can companies empower their staff? And it seems like confidence is, you touched on confidence earlier, what can they be doing to empower their staff?
That's a bit of a trick question, I think, because I don't think companies should be empowering every member of their team.
Okay.
If you have a team member who is lacking in motivation, lacking in skills and knowledge, and you empower that team member to go off and do something, first of all, is it going to get done? And secondly, if they don't have the skills to do it and they do fail, that could knock their confidence for next time. So it's about empowering the right people, and it's about then the people who aren't ready to be empowered for whatever reason. How do you either motivate them or guide them or get them to a stage where you can empower them? I think empower is such a buzzword, and everybody's thinking, how can we empower our staff? But if it's not used in the right way, then that can be potentially a bit dangerous within a care company. I've actually got something. Can I show you?
Yeah.
So this is a really practical. I always want to give practical ideas to
we
people.
love it. We're all about it.
I appreciate that if people are listening to this and not watching it, then let's see if I can make this make sense for people. But
I'm sure we can put a link in there.
We always put a link to anything anyway, so
I can give you this as a PDF. But for people who are watching, so really, really good little exercise that you can go and do, maybe when you're at home with a glass of wine or tea or whatever your tipple of choice is. I should say tea, really, shouldn't I? Because we're here with a cup of tea. And I would also say, if you're going to do this exercise, be wary that it's about your staff and it's about your team. So you don't want to leave this lying around somewhere where somebody could pick it up. But it's quite simple. You simply just draw a grid, like a box, and divide it into 4 sections on the page. And then what you want to have is, what would you call this, an axis? Something. You would have, so this is called a skill-will matrix. So anybody could Google skill-will matrix and find this online. It wasn't invented by me, but it is a really great tool. And I've used it with my own teams when I've in the past, when I've had sales teams and things like that. People who have either got a high will or a low will. They're either very enthusiastic and motivated or really can't be bothered. Then you've got high skill and low skill. You've got your experienced members of staff who know what they're doing, qualified, or you've got people who aren't skilled for whatever reason. That could be somebody who you've taken on who's got no experience in the care sector whatsoever, but you've brought them in, so they wouldn't have any skill. That's not necessarily their fault now. And then what you do is you think about your immediate team. Now, you might want to do this in teams if you have a big home, or, if you've got a small team of, let's say, 6 or 7, however you want to do it. You start to plot them on here. So I'm thinking about a member of my team and I'm thinking, right, they're actually really, really motivated. They're brand new, they're excited to get started, but they don't have any skill at the moment. So I would have them up here for high will, but they're low skilled, so they'd be here as opposed to there if they were highly skilled. Here's one I made earlier. I did have one. I've used your names as well. So let's say Tobi. Sorry, Cameron. Tobi.
It's all right.
Highly skilled, really experienced, really motivated, really high-willed. He's up in this top right-hand box. Now, I'll show you what the boxes mean in a second, but this is somebody who you can empower. And actually, it would be damaging if you didn't empower this person. If this person's being told what to do on a daily basis, this motivation is slowly going to dwindle because they're not feeling like they can get on with the job. They feel like they're always being told what to do. That could cause this person to start to look elsewhere. You know, let me go somewhere where I am valued and appreciated, because I know what I'm doing and I'm competent and I'm enthusiastic.
Yeah.
Obviously, I've talked about this one, high will but low skill, Cameron. I'm sure you are skilled.
Well, this is about making tea, isn't it?
Then this person really needs to be guided. They need to have, you would be wanting to upskill this person as quickly as possible. You'd probably want to kind of make this person their mentor.
Yeah.
So that they can, really help them develop, because you want to get them over here as soon as possible so you can empower them and let them get on with it. Now, someone down here is going to be a little bit of a problem for you. And somebody who's really highly skilled, probably someone who's worked for you for a long time, but they have got that kind of mentality now where they really can't be bothered. And if I ever talk about this, you normally hear chuckles from people because they know they have someone like this on their team. Difficult. Are you going to empower that person? Yes, they're capable of getting the job done, but are they going to do it? And then obviously this person down here is a real issue, because if they don't have the skills and they're also not motivated, this person could be damaging to the rest of your team even. A bad apple can spoil the crop. So if you go and have a look at a skill will matrix, plot your staff, and then these are the different options that you have. And obviously we probably don't have time to go into all of this, but to give people an idea, the people who are up here, yes, empower them. The people down here, you're going to have to tell them what to do, and they're probably going to take up all your time. But if you want to start to really develop a leadership culture, plot your people and start to think, how can I get them up here? What is the best way for me to lead them?
Yeah, that's amazing. That's
Yeah.
very
cool,
clear.
isn't it?
So just for the audio, it's high skill, high will, you empower. Low will, low skill, you direct them.
Yes, yeah.
Perfect.
So a question for you. Who should people try and attract? Because I know from that grid, loads of people are attracting people who have loads of experience, are probably applying on Indeed for loads of different jobs, job hopping, but they fall into the low will, high skill. So
yeah, you're going to have to try and find some motivation from within them. What attracted them to the sector in the first place? If they've been here for, if they've been in the sector for a long time and they're experienced, the job hoppers, they're people who, what is it about care that brought them into the sector in the first place? And most people that I speak to, they have got a story of why they ended up in this sector. Why they joined the sector. But if they're down here, if they've got a really low will in that sense, they're going to be tough. It's going to be a tough. I mean, we say in the book sometimes, are they going to be worth your effort, or is it time to kind of find them gainful employment somewhere else? But really, I am hearing a lot of people start to say now, let's find people who are motivated. We can teach them the rest.
So I saw you've got a copy of the book underneath there.
Yes.
You could just. So this is an amazing.
Without plugging it.
Feel free. I recommend definitely. I've had a read of this myself, and it's very practical, and we love practicability.
Practicality.
So the question I have for you, one of the questions, one of the subjects in there is about recruitment and retention. You touch on it, and you touch on how some people are moving now to a sort of values-based recruitment. Can you talk a little bit about what values-based recruitment is and why it's important for a care business?
Yeah, so I think it's important to point out that the book is, it's the Care Leader's Handbook, it's a leadership book, but recruitment and retention do come into leadership. It's quite often falls under the manager's role as well. And I think values-based recruitment, it was made popular by Skills for Care, and they do a lot of work looking at values-based recruitment and how you can attract people with the right values. A little bit like what we were just talking about, people who've got something that is that's driven them to come and work in this sector. I think the problem and the way I talk about it in potentially a slightly different way or a new way, so give people something new to think about, is that care company values are often the same in you go from one home to another, caring. So people watching right now, do you have caring?
Yeah.
Do you have respect? Do you have
compassionate?
Yeah, all of these words, they're overused in that sense. And fair enough, because that is what the sector's about. But I think the problem is it's all very well having values and trying to attract people that match those values, but they kind of they lose their kind of meaning when they're just the same and when they're just words on a wall. And I actually walked past a building on my way here and they had some words on the wall: be humble, this, that, the other. And I thought, I wonder how many people actually think, oh yeah, we live by those values. And that's quite often the issue, is that values are not, first of all, owned by the staff that work there. They've been given to them by a marketing team somewhere up in head office, and they've been told these are the values. And if somebody came up to you, if I came up to you, Cameron, and said, right, you're working here, your values are this, this and this, you might think, but they're not my values.
Yeah, it's not who I am.
They need to be owned by the team. And I think one way that people can do this is actually get together with a team, have a little workshop, get some tea in, get a bit of cake. It can be a relaxed, casual thing. Take your values, whatever they may be, 3 or 4 is ideal, not too many, and say, okay, if we took this value of respect, I want you to all have a bit of a brainstorm now, get some coloured paper, all that kind of thing. What does that mean? Or what does that mean to you, and what does that mean here? And it's interesting because I've done this workshop with managers before, and I've had people say to me, well, it means respecting the residents, and that's it. It can't mean anything else. But if you get a team of people together that deliver care and you ask them what respect means, they might come out with quite different ideas. Yes, it might include that, but actually for us as a team, what does it mean? It means we respect each other. We give each other the same respect that we would give a resident. And they might go, oh yeah, I like that. That means something to us, and that is a value that we might not live by right now, but that's the value we should live by. Not changing the word respect. You don't have to paint over your wall, but it's developing it more into what I call a culture statement that the staff can get on board with. Yes, let's live by this.
Sure.
And I think that's, once you've got that, coming back to values-based recruitment, now you can start to think, right, well, that's what respect means here. So in my job ad, in my social media posts, in my, I don't know what else, blog, newsletter, we're going to pick out this, and it's not just going to be respect is one of our values. It's going to be our staff really believe this. This is something that we live by. If you think that too, then come and work with us. And somebody might read that and go, yeah, actually, I work somewhere at the moment where the staff don't have the same respect for each other. Yeah. I want to go and work somewhere that believes in that. And I think that's how you can take your values further. They're not just words on a wall anymore. They're not just something that's, values-based recruitment. Yeah. What is it, unless you kind of make it mean something?
Brilliant. So just whilst we're on it, tell us a little bit more about the book and what made you sort of write it.
We run leadership workshops, academies up and down the country for care companies, but not all care companies can afford these types of services. We're very lucky that we work with companies that do have the ability and have the funds to put on these kind of workshops for their staff. And we thought, how can we get it out there to more people? Anybody can pick up a copy of the book, and actually they can take some of the ideas and some of the things that we teach and put them into practice. And okay, it might not be the same as having someone come in and really work with you, but I think to be able to get it out there and have people read it and go, I'm going to go and try that actually. Obviously I believe in giving people value and content, and as well as that, it makes a great kind of reference for people who have done work with us, because they come on and they might be doing a workshop once a month for 5 months, 6 months, something like that, and then they go away and you get back on with your life. And it's something that they can refer to as well. And everything in there, the skill wheel matrix that I showed earlier, it's all in there, and it's all, people can download things online, resources, and
So very practical.
Practical.
Just before your next question, Toby,
Yes.
let's just take a short break, and we'll be back with you guys very quickly.
Toby, we really need private paying clients into our care business. We don't understand the world of digital technology, digital marketing. What should we do? Look, that's the question we get a lot from businesses within the community. So what we've done is we've put together an ebook called the Care Growth Blueprint, which is a step-by-step guide on the marketing steps you need to put in place to attract private paying clients into your business. So download the ebook, the link should be in the description below, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Hi everyone, welcome back, and we'll start again with some more questions from Toby.
Yes, so the question I have for you, and I guess the listeners will be really interested in, it's actually a subject in the book, is what is the common traits that you find in outstanding leaders?
Yes. Okay. So really interesting, actually. So we were asked to get involved in some research with a chap called Sedi Frederick, who runs Articles Consulting. So I'll give him a little plug. And he was really interested in, outstanding tends to be kind of the benchmark, and we know what makes an outstanding home, and there's lots been done on that. But what makes an outstanding manager? What is it that these managers have in common? Because there's no outstanding home without an outstanding manager. I think people would probably agree with that. And so is there a way that we can look at what these outstanding managers have in common? So he ran a survey and captured a lot of information. And then we used the Judgment Index, which is the assessment that we use that measures what we call values-based behaviours, and had a look at what was coming out of that research. Obviously, we had no idea what was going to come out that is going to show us something that might be a key. And what was really interesting is that all of the outstanding managers, they might have different personalities from each other, but the traits that they had in our assessment results were all so close. They were so strong in how similar they were, but also their strength in their kind of what we call values-based behaviours. So I'll break that down a bit. So they were all very fast problem solvers. So their ability to kind of take in information, process, come up with quality decisions, think on their feet, handle difficult scenarios, all of these things they had in common, really super strong. Other things that they had in common, and obviously it breaks down all of it in the book, and there weren't really any things that were different that you could say, well, this manager had this and this manager had that. I found the key thing that I found when I looked at the research, what they all had in common is they had what I like to call a solid foundation of themselves. So a lot of us, we can go to work and we can perform at work, let's say, not sing and dance, but we can get on with the job and we can do a good job. But internally, we might be lacking in confidence. We might be really tough on ourselves and kind of beat ourselves up if things don't go well, and have a lot of self-criticism. We might have low self-esteem. We might also have stress in our personal life. Everybody has things that happen in times in their lives. What all of these managers had in common was that they all had this ability to cope with whatever was going on in their own world. And when people are like that, you tend to get more out of them at work. So if the people kind of listening, watching now, think about their team, think about who comes into work and is consistent and does a good job, doesn't cause you any drama, I quite often say, will be the people that are cool in themselves. Don't have any issues, they can handle things, they kind of got that kind of, I find it really difficult to explain. They're cool, I always say they're cool in themselves.
Yeah.
Self-confident, self-assured, and you get more out of them as a result. The people who will cause you the biggest headache at work will be the people who have got all sorts going on, either in their personal life or under the surface. Issues, not to say obviously people have issues that happen, but the fact that these managers all had this kind of foundation that meant that they could get so much done at work was a really key finding, and it explains it in a lot more detail in the book, and there's some kind of graphics that help break that down.
And I guess it's easier to sort of identify those traits in people that you've worked with. So if you're sort of promoting from within, it's easier to do that. But what about people who are just doing interviews and all they have is, 30 minutes, an hour, and these people are sort of, if you like, acting. You can't really see that they're stressful in that scenario. So what can they do in that?
Yeah, it's really tricky. And I think people, if people think about hire that you made where you thought this person's great, they're saying all the right things, they're great in the interview, and then 3 months later you think, who was that person that I hired? Everyone has a story like that.
Yeah.
And especially if you get these people who are job hoppers, who've moved around the care industry, they know what they should be answering.
They know what people want to hear.
Yes, exactly. How do you get under the surface? How do you really start to... And I think there's some interesting questions that you can ask at interview. I think sometimes getting yourself a bit more comfortable with knowing how to interview so that you can tease out of people what might be under the surface, because that's probably going to be what gets in the way of them doing a good job. It won't be, and that's the thing. We give people training in, how to do tasks, or how to, all this kind of compulsory training that we do. But there's not so much training on how to handle yourself personally, how to cope when you've got a lot of pressure, and it's the people who are good at those things that will do better. I mean, I could do a really good plug for the Judgment Index now.
It seems like it's right. It feels great.
And I mean, I'm always conscious that it's not always possible for everybody to implement these types of things. But, looking at a tool where, like the Judgment Index, we've had thousands of people take this assessment. That does measure values-based behaviours, that enables you to ask questions that... It just allows you to probe a bit deeper into, and we provide interview questions as well, that if somebody has an area that you think, okay, I'm going to ask another question around this, I'm going to ask them a bit more about, this is telling me that they're not coping very well at work right now, so why is it that they're not coping? Is it something we can handle if we give them a job? Or actually, is it not the right person for the job? And
so when would be a good time? So let's just create a scenario. Let's say you're hiring a manager. You've got 3 people who are all saying the best things, the right things. They would take this assessment, which will ask them a series of questions. And what will happen afterwards? What will happen once each of the 3 have taken the assessment? Yeah,
so the company would have reports, and we can do this ad hoc as well, by the way. So sometimes a company will say, we're putting a really important person in post. We need to make sure we get the right person. And that's a great time for people to come to us, because we can support them with that, and then it brings it to life for them. And we will say to them, ideally, take them to a second interview or at the first interview, here are some key questions based on their results. Let's say they all come in and they're all great, and you're kind of thinking, maybe then you would make a decision based on experience or qualifications. Here's some questions to think about. And it could be something, I don't know, it could be that somebody is really, really task orientated, and actually their ability to be really kind of good with people is not as strong. Now, you might be wanting to hire someone who's going to come in and kick some butt. Maybe there's been some issues within the company, and you need someone to drive tasks, and you need someone to have that kind of, other things that it could bring up, presence about themselves. Then that could mean that person's the right person. But if, let's say, you've had a tough time and you want somebody who's going to really nurture the staff, and then you're going to want somebody who's slightly more people-focused, perhaps. And I'm talking very surface level.
I fully understand.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm looking at the time now, and Cameron's going to stop me.
Yeah. I'll let it slide.
If someone wanted to learn a little bit more, where can they find you?
Sure. So our website, judgmentindex.co.uk, very easy. There's lots in there. There's lots about the different work that we do with care companies as well. You know, we're not just one thing.
Yeah.
We do kind of all sorts, really. There's some videos, more information about our leadership academies as well.
Where's the best place to pick up the book?
The book's on Amazon.
Okay.
So yeah, just put the Care Leaders Handbook into Amazon, and if you ever see it at a show, then we should have some copies there as well. So.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah.
Thanks
So
for that.
So, thanks very much, Sophie. That was a really another great episode. Again, any of the resources we've talked about, the book, the matrix, anything else that's been mentioned, it'll be in the show notes, so you don't have to rewind and go and find it. It's going to be there in that description. So we'll see you next week, and thanks again for watching and listening.
See you next week.